I hope someday to have a nice new place where I can move into.
I have a made sure darn right I get my own front door key.
People with needs for support, how are they going to live and where are they going to live in our society?
Want to feel safe and secure, want to pet.
The neighbours are not expected to be providing formal support. They are supplying the neighbourly support.
In a disability context, until now, a lot of people, their housing was part of their care package. In the inclusive neighbourhood context, your house is your own.
I would like everything on one level. I want luxury for myself.
With collective ownership and collective decision making, we can have a little bit more control over the space that we live in.
I'm a social animal. I like people. I like meeting people. I like talking to people.
In response to this very relevant question, how will we live together? Our experience emerged out of the 20th century living in Camp Hill communities, which were the fruit of Austrian Jewish refugees uniting their lives with people with intellectual disabilities, but with a very strong view to the environment and how they would live together. And coming into the 21st century, those forms that were developed needed to be reimagined and reformulated. And the threefold community asset trust is the basis of these new forms of community, asking the same question: how will we live together and be enabled in new structures that will be both legal and operational, but also in building new environments for inclusion. And that has to do particularly with places, buildings, land, and the issues of ownership and stewardship of places in which people can form communities that are inclusive. So TCAT is in its early stages of development. It's buying property that is going to be repurposed or re-understood for cultural activity and inclusion, new forms of inclusive housing, social enterprise, farming and gardening, to engineer a new moral but also pragmatic way to manage and steward buildings, and new architecture, we hope, for a period of dramatic social inclusion and environmental change. What we're aiming at is neighbourhoods, and it has partly to do with architecture, it has partly to do with geography, but it also has very much to do with human participation. The society is opening up to people living as active citizens in a participative society, and how are we going to embody that? How are we going to build that?
A number of very committed parties have come together to develop a first in Ireland, the idea of an inclusive neighbourhood, an intentional neighbourhood developed with the future residents as the key kind of developers of the neighbourhood.
Many people are looking for a greater degree of autonomy, and I think there probably is a huge amount of loneliness in people who are left to their own devices in the name of independence, really, and we all benefit from a bit of support. So to have an inclusive neighbourhood where neighbours look out for one another can only be good, I think. For me, it is a desire to live in proximity to other people of all kinds of ages and abilities and needs.
I could be cooking dinner and maybe Rosie would come over and help.
Without being part of a professional support system, people keep an eye out for each other. People have their own space, they have their sense of themselves, not as somebody who's being cared for, but as a citizen, but don't lose the daily social contact.
Our understanding of a society that is helpful to everybody and recognizes the unique individual capacity of every person and their right to be themselves and a citizen, I would say that's the bottom line, and we're trying to innovate, to implement a kind of modern understanding of that.